video number 11, and we're looking at forms. As you can see with the code on the left hand side, seriously worth pausing this video and writing that all in nice and slowly until you can see that you've got what I've got on the right hand side. You may not be able to see this very clearly in the video, but this is personal details. There is a box running around that all the way just above this button here and ending there. Do pause it, do type that in, then once you come back, hopefully we can go through each of the elements. Okay, so what do we got here? Well, let's start at this very top. The most basic of all elements. You've seen these. They are used throughout, for example, for logging into a form. All I've got is first name, last name. But I could quite easily have this as username and password. Now if I do that, you can see it appears there. The fact I haven't changed the names here doesn't matter. These names are arbitrary. They are used. They're used within the form, but the names that you choose are up to you. I will change those in a second. Notice that the form itself is defined by the form end form statements. That's the entire element for form, and in there it could just be 2 or 3 lines, or it could be a sea of commands and instructions within there. Obviously I've packed in as much as I possibly can, but if you ever see a long form, it will be defined by a form, end form, separated by everything that's in between. Everything that's in between becomes part of the element. There is an attribute called action, and I'll talk about that later. There's going to be a problem with forms for you. We're dealing with HTML and CSS, a little bit of CSS, lots of HTML, and to be honest, a form is useless purely by itself. Not enormously so. We'll look at email and that will make it semi-useful, but to be honest, it really isn't much use until you've got a higher level language. You've got a server-side scripting language involved. But at the moment, let's have a look at these. So I've shown you that you can just change the text there. I'm going to change these now only because I do like to keep to a uniformity. I do like my names to mean something so that when I'm using them later on, they tie across. And all this does is have the input command. This says to the computer, look, this is going to be a type of input. So someone can type something in here. And it says to it, make this text. So I can type in here my name like that without any problems at all. Okay, and it accepts it, it's input. The next one, same thing. There you go. Now the only trouble is, obviously, you see very frequently that they have the password box, and it certainly doesn't appear like that, and that's good because you don't want people behind you seeing what you're typing in. It's down to this type. Type tells it that this is going to be a text box. This is what's in programming terms called a text box, and type is saying text. That's what I'm going to enter into here, and the name of this item is going to be username. So when I click on this submit button, it will send the data that's in there and attach the name username. So when my next page gets this, it will say username equals and will be whatever I have in there. How do I make this show a password? Well, really simply, I change the word text to password. Reload the page. If I now type my name again, and my really secret top-notch password appears like that. It's all hidden, no one can see it, there it is. Okay? So that's a simple text box using a password field. Then we got these ones. This is another type of input. This one is called a checkbox. Now the nice thing about the checkbox is that it allows me to check as many as I wish to have. Now if you notice when I started, walk was already checked, and that's because I had this. Now please be aware, some people think you can just put checked. If you do that, it won't work. It does need to say checked equals checked, which seems nonsensical, but that's how they've set it up. That will by default mean that that one is checked. If you don't want it checked, you can uncheck it. You can have 1 checked, 3 checked, 4 checked, whatever combination you feel like. That's the thing about checkboxes. It's for multiple choice. So if I like all of those, I can tick all of those. The next type of input that we've got here is the radio button. Now the radio button looks very similar because it's obviously round, but unlike the checkbox, it is not a multi-selection, it is a single selection. I can choose one or the other, and that's it. So as I select the one, it will switch off the other. How does it know these are related? Because they're all in the same form, so therefore I have to select between these items. Another type, now this doesn't say input, this says select, and that's because that's exactly what I can do, and it's got a very simple structure. Select with a name, just like all the others have got names. Oh, by the way, one thing I did miss out on all of these buttons is the value. So when I select running, it's this value in here that's get passed. So if I want these to have numerical values, so 1, 2, 3, 4, that's fine. What will be passed through to wherever I want to send this would be the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. That's fine. Same thing here. I've got name. They're grouped together with the same name, and the value tells it what's going to be passed through. With the select, I've got the name again, but the values here are under this option. So there's another element within this called the option, and again it's got the value field and it's got the word. And how does that help me? It gives me a drop down. I can select an item on the drop down, and when I click the submit button, the corresponding value will be passed with the form. Now I come down to here, tell me about myself, and another type is text error. That's a big box like this. So I've got a default piece of text that appears there. If I don't want the default piece of text, it's easy enough. Just get rid of it, save it. There won't be any default text, but I can type lots in here. Be aware, if I press enter, and that word does not exist in case you're trying to find it in the dictionary, that formatting wouldn't last if I passed it on, but it's there, and it does help me to work with that. And if you've ever seen a big form where you enter something, you come to fill a notice on someone's Facebook wall, that's using a text area. The next part is this field set. Inside the field set I've used the input text, which is the height and weight. There's no difference there, but the field set here defines a boundary that goes around the outside and groups this together. I can also use the field set to help group these buttons, the radio buttons, together so that it groups those in a recognized entity. It's purely for formatting, looks very pretty, and needs the legend, which is the text that goes in the top of the box just there, and that's there. So that's really helpful. I then got the button, do not click this button, and that's simply a type button with the value being assigned. The last one is a submit button. This is important. There are two types of submit, cancel. Those are the two that are available to you built into a form. So if I have a submit, type submit, value submit, this will then, when I click on that, will take everything from form to end form, take all these inputs and send the data that's been selected over to wherever I ask, and that takes us back to this action. If I go back to the action, what I would normally do here is I would put another page, so form response.html. Now the trouble is there's no point in me having a form underscore response.html. There's no point in me doing that, because if I sent this, no HTML is going to be able to process this. It's not going to work. I need something that's going to take that and work with it, and that's server-side scripting. When I click on this button, the data from here is sent from my computer all the way back to the server that I've got this web page from, and then that computer will process the data. If I have a static HTML page, there's no way of processing it, and the data is simply lost. So at this point, forms seem relatively useless. There is one way that you can do this. Oh, by the way, I should mention, just so that it's in there, is if you ever do come to do actions, and let's change this to something more realistic, PHP, the language you're going to be learning later on, you also need to have the method. And there are two methods, post or get. Each one of those has an important relevance to them, and we'll look at that within the PHP when we come to look at that much later on. But be aware there is a method, because it becomes powerful later on when we come to look at the contact form. Now what I'm going to do is change that to post, and instead of putting a web page and my response page into there, I'm going to put a mail to command. Do you remember seeing this earlier when we were showing you that you could do a web link? Okay, that needs another command to be tied to enc type, enclosure type. Don't need to know what it is. All you're telling it is how the data is going to be sent. What's it going to be? And it's simply going to be plain text. Boring old plain text. This button now will send data as a mail to. It won't work on my computer, not the way I've set it up. You need to have it on the web with a mail client built in and everything else. I'm not showing you these so you can use them now, but because you can build forms now, knowing that later on you will learn how to utilize that data more effectively. There's a huge amount on this page to go through. Looking at each one, I've run through it really quickly, but to be honest, once you start coding, you'll see how it works. Be prepared for some mistakes. When you make those mistakes, learn from them, get the page working correctly, and then you'll have an example in your head and on the page of exactly how this works. Hopefully that's been useful. See you in video number 11.